Okay, so, Chris, it's so easy for me to use this phone to record our conversation. Why is it so difficult with the meeting? Wait a minute here. Okay, let me try that again. Chris, it's not working. Can you help me out here?
The problem is it's the wrong tool.
It's the wrong, I can't use my phone for the recording
No.
an event even? You know?
No.
Let's all find out why it's so difficult to master event recording and why it's so critical for your next meeting or event. Thanks, Chris.
Welcome and thank you for joining us today. We have a lot to talk about and a lot of people to do it with today. Joining us today is Jeff Schulz, Convention and Conference Manager for the American Society of Anesthesiologists here on my left. Also joining us, Chris Wissinger with PSAV's Video Product Manager, also Belinda Chioda. She is Meeting and Trade Show Manager for Produce Marketing Association, and Derek Blake, PSAV Director of Learning and Development. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you. A lot to talk about improving event recording. That is a huge topic in this industry. Let's begin with Belinda. Talk to me about some of your experiences as a client. I'm sure you've had some incredible experiences and some that probably weren't so good.
Absolutely. At our most recent event, Fresh Summit, we had a very last minute request to bring in some of our very integral players into a workshop, and we had to do it via the phone. We originally thought that maybe we would mic the phone and that would be how we would get the audio into the room as well as to those players who were not in the workshop with us. And we realized that that was going to really have an impact on the recording of the event. The quality would be very minimal, if anything at all, and nobody would be able to hear the event. I was able to talk to our AV team and tell them why we needed to do this and what our expectations were, and they were able to come up with a tool that we could use so that the audio could be piped right through the sound system and everybody would be able to hear, and just it was very quick and seamless, and had I not actually communicated with them, we may have gone forth with the mic on the phone, and it would not have turned out so well.
Crisis averted, obviously,
yes.
A good thing. On the other end of it, you have one that maybe, as a client, wasn't so good, an experience that really went poorly?
We had an issue where the sound feed wasn't even working. The session was basically going to start in 2 minutes. The session had started, the feed still wasn't worked. I brought in 3 or 4 techs, bringing in an army, more or less, to try to get this to work. Finally, when we did get it working, the sound was still not, it was muddled and still wasn't working well. In fact, I even put the headsets on to listen to it myself. And so, so the learning experience for me was just making sure we, have the room as early as possible, making sure we go through testing further in advance. And so, going forward after that experience, things were better from that aspect, at least from the sound aspect, that I could do on my end to prepare my AV company and in-house sound who we're working with. So.
Certainly can make a big difference, you know, those experiences, good and bad. Turning to the other side of it, the providers. Chris, how about you? You've had some good and bad experiences?
Yeah, I think as an industry, we AV provider, we've all had a mix of good and bad. I think there's certainly been great ones, and there have been some that are quite honestly painful to watch later. Those are the ones that sting. There are really 3, I think, trying to keep this in a positive light, there are 3 things I think broadcasters do really well that the AV providers can benefit from. One is, I think, we need to understand that there's just dozens of details with all of this. I mean, I'm looking at our set today and I see like tape here marking the chairs. I mean, that's a detail that's important, and sometimes those little things are overlooked, but they're extremely important. I think the AV provider, as well as the client, we all need to understand that and appreciate human capital and human capacity. Some of the things I hear from our team is that, when we dig into what happened to a recording, why was it bad? One of the things we hear is our AV technician who was responsible for the recording, he or she is also managing other AV tasks like running microphones or running PowerPoint, you know, and those are distractions, and the recording suffers. And then I think the third thing is we all need to realize that there's really no second chance with this, and that's what I think is the most critical thing to keep in mind, is that there really isn't a second chance.
And certainly capturing an event seamlessly really is a big challenge for the industry, and can be costly, obviously, on both sides. I know that PSAV is trying to change that. Derek, can you talk a little bit about that? You guys really want to try to change the whole image and the way the industry works with that, right?
Yeah, and as Chris was saying, there's a lot of moving parts and different people involved. So we've committed to pulling a committee together, cross-functional committee in PSAV, and we're really looking at a bunch of different areas. I think the first thing that people turn to when a recording goes wrong is the technician. You know, what went wrong technically, but that's not always the problem. Actually, as we dive into the details and look at failed recordings, they span a wide area of faults and failures, from the sales process with the customer, to the operation side, to selecting the right equipment, and then to set up, and like Chris said, to someone actually operating too many things at once. So we're tackling all of this with a blended learning program at PSAV, and there's a bunch of moving parts to it. We're educating, we're bringing awareness, we're bringing checklists, we're bringing guidelines, and the pivotal part of it is we're actually certifying our technicians on how to capture the proper event recording after working with the sales and ops and customer to really understand what the end game is. And what will be nice about that is we're aligning that to our scheduling systems, so when customers select that they do need a recording, we have the right people on the job who've been certified that will minimize our risk. You know, we won't mitigate it all, but we'll definitely minimize that risk.
I think a lot of it too, at least my sense, is that I think a lot of people, at least maybe the clients end, think it's a pretty easy thing to do, right? To record an event, it's not that difficult. Capturing it is pretty easy. You know, whip out that cell phone and we're done. You said you had an experience where you guys thought that microphone was a good example of where you thought, oh, we can do this, it won't be a problem.
Oh yeah, we've had several instances like that, and sometimes as a meeting planner, we have to set the expectations for the people that we're working with internally. So we have an education team, you know, and they're also feeding up to committees that are advising them. And we need to set that expectation throughout. You know, what is it that you're really looking for with this? And they don't always understand everything that goes into just recording, because we get the command, hey, can you just record that so we can use it later? And that's obviously not as simple. You need things such as lighting so that you can see the speaker. Audio is a huge component to this. And you know, what type of shots do you want? And all of that really plays into the end product. So we need to set their expectations so we have a good product.
And do you think, I mean, from all of you maybe, that when it comes to recording events, you think it's not that big of a deal? Or, I mean, it is a big deal. I mean, financially it is, but I know there's a whole nother aspect to component, because I mean, if you don't get it that one time, that one chance you have to record an event, that's it. You can't really go back and do it again.
Yeah, and again, it takes a lot of shareholders involved in this. I mean, as Belinda was speaking about, internal clients, education team, other foundations that you're working on behalf in our organization. You know, we have to ask the right questions of our AV company. Okay, this is what our client is asking for. We have to mesh the two together, you know, get in a room, maybe even show visuals of what something is going to look at in the end, so our internal client actually understands what it's going to look like. We can explain it. We can get our information from our AV company, who's the experts in it, and we can all sit in a room and actually see things. And so, and then I've learned from experience that I'm a very visual person. I've found a lot of our internal clients are very visual. So to actually see that aspect of what something's going to look like, okay, if we do it this way, what's something to look like if we do it this way, so they fully understand this is what it's going to be. You know, because again, it's not just as simple as pushing a button, as Chris alluded to. So
I know, Chris, you said before that everybody thinks about the financial impact of it, but you say there's an emotional component.
Yeah, I'd actually go as far as saying that the emotional piece is the loss, and the financial is just a byproduct of that. And to prove that point, there's an exercise that we're running internally to try to get our people to think a little differently about what this is. And so we talk before this, and so I'd like for you to pull out your cell phone, and I'd like for you to find a picture on your phone that is important to you, something that you don't want to live without.
There you go. So, priceless picture of the niece. We gotta, can't lose that.
So it's your niece, right? And so I too have an emotional picture, an important picture on my phone of my family. So you just handed it to me, and so let's imagine if I ruined this picture, or worse, I deleted it, and then I hand it back to you.
Right.
How do you feel? Right? And so the analogy here, or the similarities is, you, in this example, represent the customer or the meeting planner. Your phone and the image represented the event, and I represented the audiovisual provider. And if I don't get it right as the audiovisual provider, and I hand it back to you with missing or damaged parts, there's an emotional loss there. The byproduct is you want your money back, or you want some type of credit. So the financial, I believe, is actually secondary.
Interesting. Among all of you, I hear one common word, and I think it's communication. How vital is that in this whole game?
It's completely vital. I mean, again, it's about listening to your internal client, or listening to whoever that you're working with that wants the recording, processing that, understanding what they want, asking the AV company, what are our options? Do we want to just capture sound or synced up with the PowerPoint audio? Do we want full session capture, where we're seeing actually the headshot of the speaker as well as the PowerPoint, and syncing that up as well? And for them to understand that visual, so getting the information from them, getting the information from the AV company so we understand, and then just mirroring them together in the end, and executing that for the experience of the attendee, because that's the end product, is what everyone's going to see. Not everyone's going to see how we got there, but if the end product is great, everyone's going to be happy.
We also need to start having those conversations earlier, internally as well as with our AV provider. We'll go ahead and get the content together and do the layout of the room and everything, and sometimes the recording is one of the last things we think about. So there's not oftentimes a budget for it. But if we can have those conversations earlier, we can have that budget available, and we can set the expectation. Then we can also have those conversations with the AV provider to make sure that everybody is coming together and the product is what we want.
I'm going to ask you one last quick question, maybe quick, top concern, top tip for those looking to improve their event recording. How about you, Derek?
I think the top tip that I have is the customer having a good vision of what they want the end product to be used for. Because I think when you think of a capture, is it as simple as we just need to capture a still and we're going to replay it for a couple key people that weren't at this event? Or are you actually going to use that in some type of production environment or doing some promo? It's very different, right? So understanding that clear vision, and then for the AV provider to knowing how to make that come to life and put the right labor and resources behind it will, raise the likelihood of a good product.
Got a top tip?
Yeah, for me it's definitely setting the expectation across the board, AV provider all the way through to the committee, so that when the member, the attendee, or whoever it is that sees it at the end, they see exactly what you had in mind to begin with, because then you'll be happy. If the expectation isn't clear across the board, you could have an excellent product and still be unhappy with it.
Chris, you're up.
Yeah, top tip. Putting it simplistically, I think all parties should recognize the fact that the business of event recording is a high stakes game of risk, and it should never be considered an afterthought.
Awesome.
I think the biggest thing is give yourself time. Give yourself time to prepare everyone, so everyone understands. So if there is more discussion, you have the time to discuss it, and that's the number one thing.
Thank you so much, Jeff, Chris, Belinda, Derek, all of you. Great information, a lot of helpful tips, I think, a lot of things to learn. And thank you for joining us. A lot to learn and a lot of ways and considerations to think about as you work on improving capturing your event. Thanks.